Change. So last week we were talking about change. And one of the things I was talking about was that qualities of God. You pick a quality of God, the divine, first cause, where there's no past precedent, that is always already fully itself. No baggage, no stuff. Be with that quality over and over, and it'll start changing in your external world. It'll change you. You become different, and the world becomes different. And so I was saying that sometimes we work with the quality of God because there's a situation or circumstance in our life that is demanding some sort of shift. So it could be a health challenge, it could be financial, it could be in a relationship. And so you say, well, what's the quality or qualities that I want to work with here? And you work on it for a period of time, and that will shift you inwardly and then also follow externally. And then we all have these qualities that we might feel, one quality or a couple qualities that we feel that sort of call us. It's a calling that we've had our whole life. Love is often a big one, that just to be this place of unconditional love is something that I give my life to. I want to become more and more of in my life, that infinite nature of love. And so my invitation for this past week was to look at where are you, what qualities are you working with because of external situations, or is there an inner calling from a quality? Now, how many of you thought about that? Well, that's only very few. And that brings us to today's talk. How intense are you? What brought it to light for me was I've been following this. It's new for me. There's a guy who sings musicals. I guess he sings in general. His name's Aaron Tveit, and I just sort of been following he's got to be cast in a musical. They're making a musical version of Moulin Rouge, the movie. They made it to stage. So I'm just sort of following this whole process. So I'm following the process of moving on to stage. Then they have previews. I'm learning the language. I didn't even know the language. I don't really know the world of musicals. So they have the previews where audiences come, and at first I was reading some critical things of it, but as it's going on, it's getting better. And then finally the big opening night, there's a lot of energy, and New York Times just gives it a rave review, and the audience members are all saying, oh, it's amazing. The audience is totally engaged. They're clapping and yelling throughout the musical. There's so much energy. It's really high energy. And I'm thinking, oh, opening night, great review. I'm done, It's done, accomplished. But then I realized, they got to keep doing 8 shows a night with that high energy. That's like they have to sustain that high energy where it didn't conclude with a nice review. So I thought, man, that must be exhausting to put all that energy, 8 performances a week, night after night, the same story. It's not you're like you get to do a different story every night, same story. So I just sort of tuned it out because it was a little too much for me. And then the ending, the closing of the show. So I was reading the people's comments, and now there's suddenly all these little video clips. So I was watching all the video clips, and I could see how high energy it was. And people's reactions, they're just like, I can't believe it's ending. What am I going to do until next year? They saw it 3 or 4 times. This is very expensive. It's not like seeing a movie, and they're saying, I just had to go see it again. And they get the signatures from all the cast members, and the cast members are sad because they're tired, but very sad because this was a really emotional, intense experience. And their closing was last Sunday. So I'm reading all this, and I almost, on the other side of the country with no connection with this musical, really, other than the one I imagine in my head, am overwhelmed by the intensity. That the word intense, like this is just intense. These guys are intense about musicals. And maybe people are always intense about musicals. I just was unaware of it. And then I thought about last week's talk about qualities. I'm like, I wonder how intense people feel about those qualities. Do we have that same emotional intensity about working with our spiritual journey? So I started being with this whole energy of intensity, how it's so creative, and we love intensity. Now, I have to say first, before I go, because some of you, when you say how intense are you, we don't like to be around intense people where it's negative, where it's like, this has to be perfect, and if it's not, I'm a failure and I'm worthless. There is that intensity. I have a friend, she was raised competing piano playing, and she did very well, so she went on to college, got her master's in Switzerland in international competition and performance art, and she did very well, but it turned her off to music. By the time I met her, she had stopped playing and didn't find any joy in playing because to her, music and her playing, every time she sat at the piano was, am I worthy? is this song going to be perfect enough? That's an intensity where I don't think it's the negative side. I just think it's the distorted side of intense energy. So it was distorted into something about worth. When we really put in good energy towards something, even if we fail, we still feel good. So it's like a sporting event. If you have two teams that are going at each other, and you know that your team, it lost, but it did everything it could, and they did a great game, people will say, oh, we lost, but it was such a good game. So that's healthy intensity. You can feel intense about wanting to do really well, and even if it doesn't reach, what's that motivational speaker? I think it's Les Brown. He says, shoot for the moon, and if you fail, you'll land in the stars type thing. If you give everything and you don't do as well as you want, you still will feel good about it because that intensity is positive. That energy of, I want something to happen that's significant here. And we seek it out. We seek it out as a culture. Look at all the sporting events. They have thousands. I mean, look at the money and the people because it's intense. In fact, people feel the sporting event that's the failure is the one that's boring, where not a lot happens, where there's not a lot of emotional intensity. The reason why people follow sports is the intensity. The reason why people like a good movie, the way we rate a good movie is if it emotionally connected with me, if I had some emotional response to it. I think the reason why people like musicals is they get emotionally caught up. There's music and a story, and it's all happening together, and then you get to meet the cast afterwards so that there's interaction between the players and the audience. So there's all this energy, and we love it. So when we say we don't want to be around intense people, I think that's intensity that's gone wrong, or, and this is the second part, which is we're not ready to be around people who are at that high vibrational energy a lot. I think of Paramahansa Yogananda. At the end of his life, he was translating and interpreting the Bhagavad Gita. And I think this is the last work he was doing before he left his body. And he'd be in his writing cabin, writing all day, and the monk who would come and bring him food, he said he would come out of his cabin, and the monk said he had to step back a few steps because the energy coming at him was so powerful that he couldn't even stand in it. He had to walk away or pull away from it. And Yogananda says that the energy of pure spirit is so powerful that most of us couldn't handle it. If we actually had a direct contact with it right now in all of its force, and then you read that in the Bhagavad Gita where Arjuna has that direct experience and says, stop, enough, come back to your normal form where I can handle it. So we can say spirit is so intense we can't handle it. So I think these moments that we create for ourselves are ways to experience it in quantifiable, contained ways, and it feels so good, which is why sporting events get as much more attention often than church services. The mega church services that do really well, why? Because they create that incredibly high vibration. When you go into a big performing type church with the music and the energy, you just feel it, and what happens is our heart opens. When we're around that intense energy, our heart opens. We feel more aligned with pure spirit. And a sporting event and a movie or a musical can do that as much as a church service because you walk out of there more in love. All those people's comments I was reading about Moulin Rouge, they felt more love. They felt the feeling they didn't want it to stop was because they had this external experience. So they got focused on the external experience to keep making them feel that way. But they loved the feeling. And it's the same feeling that we have when we're with spirit. Anything that opens our heart, our body, our mind, and our soul. So the question we need to ask ourselves is, how intense am I on my spiritual journey? Do I allow myself... Here, let me say one other aspect, and then we'll get to the question. So there's the other aspect of the spiritual journey, which is I want to be calm. Nothing phases me except everything as it is. Nothing's good, nothing's bad, it just is. Oh. Did I do that well? Zen, Buddhism, it's very, very much about being, peacefulness. And that's a huge dimension of spirituality that we grow into. And we do that because sometimes the tension of life is so intense, we need to just breathe. And so spirituality becomes almost like a breather, a way to deal with all the tension that normal human living gets us to. When we get to certain levels, we start to realize it's the same energy, that the ecstatic energy like we see in the whirling dervishes and the Sufis, the mystical Islam, the ecstatic energy of spirituality, of a Sunday service that's really high in energy, and those deep meditation experiences are the same. That's when we know we're really becoming awake. When I can feel the ecstatic high energy, sitting stillness and meditation, feel the bliss of pure spirit that's so alive. I mean, it's so alive. It is not zoning out. It is not bored. It is so alive, but it's inward, and the ecstasy of the external, that's one and the same energy. And we start to recognize that we can cultivate both of those. I like to look at it, Treya Wilbur, one of my teachers, coined the term passionate equanimity, like being passionately peaceful, in essence. And I love the paradox of that, or intensely peaceful, or peaceful intensity, or a flowing intensity, going with the flow, but intensity. Like, we want those two paradoxes always to be working with us. If you're only intense, but you don't have, if your whole idea is, I'm doing this intensity for my perfection, and you fail, then you fall apart. But if you also realize that in some sense we're creating the intensity, that everything is fine even if it doesn't work out. That's the key. Even if it doesn't work out, you come in with full intensity. You come on with that full sporting event, and it doesn't work out the way you want, still everything is fine. Because spirit is always being spirit, good or bad, right or wrong. It's just being itself. So we're carrying both that paradox with us, which I think helps us with the intensity, which is why we can go into watch a movie and feel so intensely, because ultimately we know it's not really happening in my life right now. So I can cry a little bit harder or laugh a little harder because it's not really happening. Or we go to see action films. I mean, come on. Most of those are so unrealistic, but why do we like them? Because it makes us feel things. It doesn't have to be real. We wouldn't want it to be real in our life, but it allows us to feel without. So spiritual awakening is to realize we can feel that deeply and nothing can ever hurt, harm, or endanger us. The tension starts to come is when we actually think we can be hurt. So that's why we do the spiritual work, to realize I can give intensely with my whole heart, body, mind, and soul. And even if humanly it looks like I fail, I am still absolutely whole, perfect, and complete. Nothing can ever take away, which allows me to be even more intense if I allow myself. So I go back to the question, how intensely do you allow yourself to be on your journey? So when I'm saying, last week I gave the example of peace. I was working on this quality of peace because I was working full-time, going to school full-time, was volunteer working, and I was the opposite of peace. I was just like going crazy, going to kill somebody. I mean, it was just really agitated. We'll say that, just highly agitated. So when I was calling for peace, I wasn't going, I'm going to pray for peace now, and I'm praying for peace. I'll do a little treatment in the morning for peace. And, oh, yeah, if you happen to remember, could you pray for peace for me? I wasn't doing that. Because I needed it. I needed this quality. I was intense about it. And that intensity is what breaks us through the limitations, those prisons. And that's part of why we say, where is my intensity? Because if you're just silent, just a little bit working on a quality, you're not going to get very far. If you're coming up against a wall in your life, if you feel stuck in an area of your life, just sort of praying about something or thinking about it or letting it roll around in your head, it'll have some impact, but it's not going to have a lot. If you really need to shift the structures in your life to become different, I had to become more peace to experience more for the peaceful changes to happen out there. I was intense. I was seeking out every different prayer group I could think of. Pray for me for peace. I was asking everybody. I was actively participating. It was focused. It was intense. It was intensely peaceful. I was intensely looking for peace. And that's what shifted things. So as I'm asking you last week, what are the qualities that you're working with? I'm not asking from a sense, oh, isn't that interesting? Those are I really like those qualities. That has no impact on your spiritual journey at all. It might be interesting information, but the question is, how actively, intensely are you allowing, because spirit is intense, how much are you allowing that incredible spirit intensity to activate these qualities in your life to actually make a change and consistently and sustain over time? And I think that, as I was being with it, I was realizing that in many ways that's the hardest part of this, is sustaining. I was thinking about how you sustain high, intense energy. Often when I was at Agape, there was a high, people came and go a lot because it's a high energy, you love it, I never missed a service. Wednesday, Sunday, I met every service. I wouldn't miss it. I was trying to get everybody I knew to come. It was awesome, but you do that for year after year, it becomes normal, and it's not like you don't have the high anymore. And you hear this all the time from people who go to services. That's the big thing, not just churches, synagogues, temples. People are leaving traditional spiritual communities. Been there, done that. We've done this part of our community world. We don't need this anymore. I got to that place when I was at Agape. I wasn't the only one. This is pretty normal. So one of the things they absolutely pounded into us in practitioner training, because by the time you have to go through a lot of pre-prac classes, by the time you're in practitioner training, and you've been going to services for a couple years now, you feel like, okay, I got it, and I'm doing the work, I'm in my classes, I'm involved, I'm participating, Sunday services aren't as important. What they said to us was, you are no longer going to get fed. You are going to be the consciousness. You are going to give. Every time you go to service, you are there to see the wholeness and the perfection of each and every individual who comes into that space. You are doing spiritual work. You are not here anymore to give. The people who are coming from the beginning, Sunday services are for people who are coming for new. This is all new to them, and they're opening up to the energy. You are there to serve them. So when they started the community, they had 20 people, and all 20 of those people were coming to serve. It wasn't just Reverend Michael up there speaking. It wasn't just the musicians. It was these 20 people who were wandering around through the community, talking to people, praying with people. They were giving of themselves. They were expressly there to give unconditional love, to hear people's stories, to just radiate and pulsate the consciousness of unconditional love, to do their work all week long on unconditional love. So when they showed up on Sunday and Wednesday services, they were unconditional love. And as Agape has grown, the practitioner corps has grown. And so when I was there, they had something like 400 or 500 practitioners. I know it's easily more than that. They might even have 1,000 up to, I don't know. So that's hundreds of people coming on a Sunday morning with the intention of radiating and pulsating unconditional love. Not to get it, but to give it. And so when you walk into that space, you feel it. You're overwhelmed by this power of love coming over you because you have all these people who are there to be of service. That's intensity. That's keeping up this emotional intensity. And then the practitioners also have to find ways to get served. So that always becomes, in every spiritual community, when you've been a practitioner for a long time, how do you feed the practitioners? Because they're there now serving, they're feeding on Sunday morning in consciousness. How are they getting fed? And so that becomes this is the part that we all need to look at. The spiritual journey, unlike a football game, unlike a musical theater performance, those come and go. Our spiritual journey is for our entire life. So it is very easy to get into a laissez-faire. I'm doing my spiritual work. I did my meditation today. Yeah, I prayed. It's very easy. I did my affirmations. Like when you're new, it's all exciting, right? You have the intensity, but the intensity over time starts to dull a little. So what do we do? I'm telling you, I've been thinking about this all week because I was so taken by the intensity and thinking, wow, it's been a long time since I really felt that intense about anything. And I liked it. Like, wow, I want to feel that intensity. And so I was thinking about, on the spiritual path, what do we do to cultivate that intensity? So we have our own individual ways to do it. But I think one of the ways we cultivate intensity is community. So it's actually too bad that we say people are leaving community, because I think we need community more than ever, and not to both to receive and to give. We need to give our gifts in a group of people. We need to feel other people giving their gifts, receiving the gifts. We need to be in that whole giving and receiving cycle, because the way intensity is increased always, always, always is with other people. You can do it on your own. I'm not saying you can't do it on your own. But whenever you have the two or more gathered consciousness, you have more people meditating. You're in a group meditation. That group meditation is going to be incredibly more powerful, usually, generally, nothing is absolute, than when you're by yourself. Everything heightens when we're with a group of people. And that's why I've been thinking about this community a lot and how important it is, because this has been healing for me. Because, again, I've mentioned before, I grew up where church really wasn't that important. It was sort of an irrelevancy. Life was important, and church was for those sort of weirdos who needed church. And I think that has been in the back of, and so I've been really working on, like, how important is Sunday service? And it's just growing and growing and deepening in me. How important. Yes, there might be this cultural shift, moving away from Sunday mornings, and I think that's too bad, because I'm just figuring it out. Wait a minute. Sunday mornings, no matter where you are. I was in Cleveland. They have this wonderful little community that's been going on for like 30 years. I was so grateful to be there, to go on a Sunday morning and be with like-minded people and like souls and just remember that we are one and to practice the oneness and what our thoughts matter and all of those things that we teach. To just be in that vibration every week, to put ourselves into it, to give each other, to be able to give from that place without embarrassment. I remember one of the number one reasons why I loved going to Agape, probably the reason, because I loved God. And I love spirit, divine intelligence, thing itself. In my head at the time, God was a comfortable word. I don't care what the word is. Loved your reading today using all of those different words of God because it's the same thing. Many, many words, one vibration. I loved God, but I always was ashamed of it or embarrassed, and I never talked about it. And I remember the thing that I felt at Agape, and I've heard some of you have said this when you went here or to another spiritual community, is finally you could come out of the closet. You can just be free to say what you wanted to say. I could be in a community. I remember Reverend Michael, I still remember this. He got up there and he just said, I love God so much. And I remember it wasn't just that he said it, but I was sitting there and everyone around me resonated with it. I'm like, I'm with my people. They all love God so much and nobody had to hide it. Everyone was just like, we love God. And it's just so great to be in a room of people who are not willing to hide it, but to open up and say, we love God. I was just so happy that I didn't have to hide anymore. To me, that's what spiritual community does. It intensifies that we get to be our spiritual self and talk about it freely and openly. And the more we talk about it, our words matter, the more we activate it and bring it alive in our life. And it feels so good. God feels good. It is infinitely loving, infinitely bliss, infinitely joy-filled. The more we open up to it, we are more opening to this intense energy that feels so good. And it's not coming from a new movie. It's not coming from out there. It's coming from within us, from within our own creative intelligence. And so as I was also being with this is a final point, but it might take a moment. Final but long point. Is ritual and ceremony. Again, I grew up in a world that's sort of agnostic and atheist and also Protestant and Calvinistic in ideology. So our church was very plain. There was no pictures. I mean, we had the plain cross, but that was it. You just kept everything simple. My family was not into, we had routines. So Christmas, we had a routine. We never went to church on Christmas or Easter. Like, that's supposed to be the big time. No, but Easter really, after the Easter Bunny, Easter had no meaning in our house. Even Valentine's Day, my dad, those hearts with candy? So he bought this, I remember it to this day, this beautiful pink heart for my mom full of candy years earlier. So he would save the box and give her the same heart box every year and just put new candy in it every year because it was totally practical. And and then nothing was happening on Mother's Day. Like, my family just did not do things because it was always sort of what matters is how you live your life, being practical every day. So I know many of you were raised in the Catholic teaching, which is very different. There's a lot of ritual. There's ornation. When you go into a cathedral, they have the stained glass high up, so your initial reaction is to look up and open your heart and be in awe. I mean, they created the entire environment to create awe. The artwork, the music, those Gregorian chants. Or if you go into Buddhist monastic communities, gonging and the sound. I mean, they're trying to use all the senses that we use in the art world, in the musical theater world, or sports. They got the chants and the thing going. The spiritual communities engaged all the senses to create this opening, this intensity, to intensify the spiritual experience. Spirit is there whether we do it or not. And that was where I was always like, well, Spirit's there. I don't need to do all that stuff. Spirit's there. I don't need to sing music, or I can just sit there. And Spirit's there. I don't have to do all that extra stuff. But that's my Calvinistic Protestant upbringing. And then I'm like, but every time I hear the music or the chanting or the art, my heart opens up and I feel Spirit. The intensity of that moment comes through. And one of the other things, and that was one aspect. And just in this week, there was a thread on the minister's listserv, right in alignment. I love how Spirit, synchronicity always, is working with us. There was someone, a minister was asking about robes. Do we wear robes for special events? Because she has this really expensive robe and she doesn't wear it very often. And I got into this whole dialogue about the power of ritual and ceremony. We are, as an organization, tend to be fairly casual. Agape was very casual. But one of the things I learned at Agape was the power of ritual. And you get dressed up for certain things. So people be dressed. Actually, one of the things, and I hope you feel it here too, one of the things I loved about Agape was people would come in shorts or sandals, and then someone else would be decked out, full on. And you can come one week hope you feel that if you ever want to be decked out, you could do that here. Like, whatever your heart feels, if I want to get totally dressed up and flourishing, no one goes, oh, why are you dressed like that? That's so weird. Before it used to be when you were casual, that was weird. Now it's if you get really dressed up. It's whatever you're feeling in that moment to fully express that individual mood for your day, that you feel comfortable doing that. So that's how church was. But then when ritual came in, I remember my very first ritual, it was Reverend Carol Trailer's ordination. And the environment, they changed the environment. They had branches and twigs, and then she had these drummers coming in, leading the procession, and it was just like, oh, so great. And then, and they have this here in the Bay Area, ordinations, installations, various events. And anytime a minister is ordained or installed, or even graduations, including practitioners, all the area minister, anyone, the whole world is invited, but usually it's the area ministers come, and they wear their robes. And what they decided years ago in our organization was, like back in the 70s, they wanted to all be unique, so they were all wearing different colored robes. And they said, no, let's all wear the same color robes. So they wore the black robe, and then they have these stoles. And I never thought about it one way or the other. I didn't have strong opinions. So I'm sitting in this ordination, and all these ministers, because LA, there's a ton of ministers, came processing in for ordination. And there was something, I just started bawling with the music and the environment. It was new for me just to have that sense of ritual and how holy this moment was. Her ordination, and I remember when she got her stole, the minister explaining what the different threads mean, and it was she used these incredible metaphors, and it was so moving, and her children were there, and they honored her ancestors, and it was just, the whole thing, it was a moment. And it's what theater does. They create moments. It's what we love when you look at highlight reels of sporting events. You have moments. We create our moments. We make them up. Ultimately, it's not like Spirit's creating this. We choose to create it. I happened to flip through Moneyball about the Oakland A's, and they had the moment where the A's beat the record for the amount of games won in a series, 20 games in a row, and everyone's so happy. And I remember Billy Bean, I don't remember, I just saw it, so it's not like I have a great memory, says, it's really great for the fans. I'm crying, so I'm like, oh, it's so great, yay, Oakland. And he's like, it's great for the fans, but it ultimately doesn't mean anything. Because for him, something else, he had another goal that he wanted to meet. Like, that was a great goal for the fans, and it's great that they all feel happy. And that's when I got, we make up whether it's meaningful or not. Because what he was saying was meaningful to him really didn't have much meaning to me. So it's an individual thing. It's a choice. When I entered, at the end of practitioner training, you take a written exam, and then an oral panel. Now, Agape, because they love to ritualize things. And again, I want to say it's not always about how complex the ritual is. It could be very simple, but it's the intention and the intensity. So you have a collective group of people saying, this is really important. So you're getting paneled, and they have the candles, and you get met by a practitioner, and there's this whole ornate thing. But now I worked at Agape, and I was like seeing the wizard behind the curtain. I'm like, oh, this is just all made up. You're going to go in and get paneled. So I had no concern whether I was going to pass the panel. So they're doing this whole ritual, and I'm just sort of jabbering downstairs, talking too much, and they keep shushing me because I'm too loud. And because they're all up there meditating. I'm like, and then I went into my panel, and the panel was fine. It represented how I took it. I was taking it very casually. I was like, this is all, just made up. They're making meaning of it. It doesn't have any meaning. So my panel was like that. The minister, I was part of a team that was asking ministers, I was on the ministerial team to have ministers teach classes, and she wanted to teach in the Holmes Institute. So she was basically candidating with me about, can I come teach in the ministerial school? So it didn't even feel like a panel. It felt, I'm like, that didn't, I passed, but there was no oomph to it. So by the time I was in ministerial school, same thing, written test, which was intense, but that was, I would say, the only ultimate I wasn't sure about. But then the panels, again, I had no concern about passing the panels, but now I realized I had missed so much in that prac training. I saw the power of joining in on that this is meaningful. So I fully participated in all the rituals and all the meditation, like this is a sacred moment, and it felt it. And so when I went into that panel, it was such a sacred panel, and the conversation was so beautiful, and I felt so much love and support because I chose to participate. I had graduated from high school, from college, from practitioner training, and none of that meant anything because it didn't mean anything to me. I didn't bring the meaning. The ritual was still there, but I'm like, yeah, it's ritual, because I still have my Calvinistic Protestant background. It's like, yeah, it's just stuff. It's just extra stuff. But then as I learned, being at Agape, how powerful it is to join in, that we create the meaning. So these rituals and ceremonies, right now, and we just did Islam, the pilgrimage to Mecca is happening. Has anyone seen pictures of it? It's extraordinary. It is, you cannot, I can just say it by words, look it up. It's amazing. These are all people who are together. Talk about collective consciousness. This is international. People from all over the world right now are in Mecca. It's extraordinary. That collective consciousness. Talk about intensity. I invite you, if you haven't seen it, please see the movie Malcolm X with Denzel Washington. It is an extraordinary, it should have won an Academy Award. He should have won an Academy Award. It's an incredible movie. And you see the transformation Malcolm X goes through when he goes to Mecca. You feel the vibrational frequency of the intensity of that moment and how much that had he had his own individual experience in his prison cell, which is by himself, and then years later, this collective intensified energy and how much it impacted who he was as a leader. We get to choose how much we want to participate. The thing with Centers for Spiritual Living is because we're open to all paths, we don't say everybody practices, Christmas is important to everyone. Might be important to some people, not to others. Winter solstice, autumn equinox, Day of the Dead, Easter, Passover, Hanukkah, Ramadan. You may have your own rituals. We all do our own things. The question is collectively, like I love our burning bowl, and it seems like our burning bowl is something that we collectively say, this is important, and it feels, for anyone who's been to the burning bowl, it feels really good, doesn't it? That collective energy that we have. So I'm looking at, as you're looking at your own intensity around your own spiritual journey, you're in home groups. Are you asking your home groups, do you know what qualities you are? Are you asking your home group to help you with the energy around this quality that's going to change your life, freedom or abundance? You feel stuck in a prison? Do freedom and abundance. That'll get you out, but you have to do it intensely. Notice how intense you are. You start with noticing, but the noticing itself isn't going to be the energy that changes. It's cultivating the intensity. We create the meaning. We cultivate our own intensity. That's what I've learned from watching Moulin Rouge. There was no intensity there. They created it. It was all self-created. Reverend Michael, when he started Agape Service, he created the intention for that intensity, that emotional intensity. There was intention there. It wasn't there. He could have just got up there and speak. He's a brilliant man. He could speak. It was the whole thing. There's this collective intention. Sporting event. They want games that are close. They want the intense games because that's what gets people going. We choose to create the intensity on our spiritual journey. It is lifelong. It is not going to, it's not there unless we create it. So what are the rituals in your life, the collective rituals, the group rituals that you want to participate in? Sunday mornings are essential, I think, but it's only essential because I think it, right? To the extent that we think it's important to be here on a Sunday morning, to be together, to be feeling the presence, the power and the presence of pure spirit, the bliss, the joy, the harmony is right in this room right now. As we like to say, it is never more in the past or in the future than it is right now. It is up to us to activate it collectively. And it's not going to happen if only one person is doing it or two people are doing it. It's when you come in this door, if you've been coming, some of you have been coming here from the very beginning. If you've been coming to services for a lot of years, you're coming not to get. You are coming on a Sunday morning because it's important for you to be here to give to all the people who are new here for the first time. You are going to pour forth, and it doesn't always have to be it can be absolutely in service, but in consciousness. You are coming as pure light. We're a lighthouse. I am coming as pure light and pure love to radiate and pulsate and vibrate the pure spirit of God to every person with whom I contact. You are essential for this Sunday morning to be what it's meant to be. It's important and it's powerful. It's up to us. We choose. What's the intensity with which we choose to live our spiritual journey, to cultivate those qualities that we talked about last week? Do you have any emotional intensity, or is it just sort of interesting information? What is that for you, and how are you going to cultivate emotional intensity in your lifelong, never-ending spiritual journey? Let's pray. So we give thanks, power, presence, love, intelligence of the universe that is in, through, and as all of us right here and right now. We open our hearts, our bodies, our minds, our souls to this infinite love intelligence. We know that there's nothing that we need to do, change, fix, or make happen to open ourselves and make ourselves available to it right here and right now. We allow it to pour through us, through our awareness, through our recognition that everything that we are is this infinite, infinite power, this infinite intensity and energy and life force pouring and cultivating through every atom and cell of our being, through our energy body, through our physical body, our mental body, through all that we are. It is pouring through us now, and we allow those walls to dissolve into the nothingness from which they came, those old limits, those old ideas, those boundaries, anything that imprisons our mind, our heart, and our body. We allow them to dissolve now so that we may bask in this infinite oceanic love intelligence that surrounds and unfolds us right here and right now. The light that lighteth up the universe is ours, is who we are in this very moment. We are the light that lighteth up the universe. We are the way, the truth, and the light. Every time we say yes to this infinite nature of pure spirit, we allow our hearts to be free and unabandoned. We allow ourselves to love God openly, to be unafraid, to shine and share the glory of the living presence that is alive within us, our love for it and its love for us and its love itself. We allow ourselves to be alive and awake in the power and the force here and now. Any area in our life that is needing healing, that is needing a shift, we allow the power of this life, this energy, this grace that infuses us to heal those places of separation in our physical body, in our emotional body, in our mental body. If there's places in work, in our work life that need that shift, we allow that the freedom and the abundance of pure spirit is breaking us free even now, is revealing new possibilities inwardly first. Inwardly we are free. Inwardly we are abundance itself now, this very moment. We are freedom and abundance now, and it is pouring forth in every area and circumstance and condition of our life. In our relationships, any place where we are feeling blocked, limited, hurt, endangered, we know the wholeness and the love of pure spirit that is our life, that we only know and see and feel and experience love, the unconditional support of pure spirit, the entire universe conspiring for our good, and those are showing up not only inwardly but outwardly in all of our relationships. We feel the joy of the deep and the intimate connection with each and every person with whom we come in contact. It is God meeting God as deep calling unto deep and deep answering deep. We are living this life. We are living this life here and now, individually and collectively. Thank you, God, for this extraordinary lighthouse community. Every person who has walked through these doors, the hundreds of people that have walked through this door, even for one time, have been blessed by the power and the energy that is here today. We give thanks that we continue to grow and expand in our expression and our transparency of this oneness and this love and this beauty and this light. And we continue to bless all those that are continuing and making their way to this community even now. We are a blessing. We are blessed, and we are a blessing by each and every individual who enters these doorways, who hears our voice on the YouTube videos, who hears these wonderful music and the prayers and having these wonderful conversations and connections before and after service. This community is God's gift to itself. How grateful I am for this community, for all spiritual communities, for this living reality of the intensity of pure spirit, waking us up and reminding us of its power, of its love and its joy and its wholeness all of the time. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. We live in gratitude. And in this gratitude, we just let this word be now. We release it into the law of life, knowing that as we have known it, felt it, seen it, accepted it, spoken it, it is done. And I invite us all to say together now, and so it is. Amen.